It was the summer of 1960, and the streets of Seattle's Chinatown were thick with the smell of firecracker smoke and the sound of distant drums. A 16-year-old boy named Doug Palmer stood in the crowd, his heart pounding as he watched a small Chinese man move like nothing he had ever seen before. In that single moment, without knowing it, Doug's entire life was about to change forever. Long before that fateful evening, Doug Palmer had already tasted what he believed was real toughness inside the boxing gyms of Seattle. He had traded punches with hardened fighters, felt his knuckles ache against heavy bags, and learned to respect the raw language of physical combat. Yet all of that hard-won experience would crumble into nothing the moment he laid eyes on Bruce Lee. Chinatown night pulsed with life that evening, a celebration where lanterns glowed against the darkening sky and families gathered to honor their heritage. Onto the stage stepped a slender young man in a black kung fu uniform, standing shorter than the students who flanked him on either side. Nobody watching could have guessed that this modest figure was about to unleash something the crowd would remember for the rest of their lives. Faster than the eye could follow, Bruce Lee's fists began slicing through the air with terrifying precision and grace. Each strike cracked like a whip, snapping to a halt just a hair's breadth from its imaginary target, as if the air itself were his opponent. The audience gasped and then went utterly silent, spellbound by a display that defied every notion of what a human body could do. Deep within young Doug's chest, something powerful awakened that he could not yet name or understand. This was more than the thrill of watching a skilled performer, and it was more than a boy's fascination with fighting. It was the electric recognition of destiny, a certainty that this stranger held the key to something Doug had been unknowingly searching for all along.
Reality, however, had a way of dimming even the brightest dreams of a teenage boy with no connections and no standing. Bruce Lee was already becoming a whispered name throughout the community, a figure surrounded by an aura of near-mythical skill. How could an ordinary 16-year-old possibly hope to approach such a man and earn the right to learn from him? Determined not to let this chance slip away, Doug turned to the only resource he had, which was his network of friends and neighbors. He began spreading the word through every corner of the community that he was searching for the young kung fu master. Little did he know that his innocent request would twist and darken as it passed from person to person. Whispers have a strange power to transform as they travel, and Doug's humble hope became something else entirely. What started as an admiring boy's wish to learn slowly morphed into something that sounded far more menacing. By the time the message reached Bruce Lee, it no longer spoke of a student's devotion, but of a large white teenager hunting him down. Growing up amid the unforgiving streets of Hong Kong had taught Bruce Lee to read danger in the smallest signs. In his world, when someone announced they were looking for you, it rarely meant friendship, and it almost always meant a coming storm. And so a weariness settled over Bruce, and he began to wonder what this towering stranger truly wanted from him. 7 long days drifted by before fate finally arranged their meeting at the vibrant Bon Odori festival held by the Japanese community. The night air shimmered with the glow of paper lanterns, and the rhythmic beat of festival drums pulsed through streets crowded with dancing families. It was within this sea of celebration that Bruce Lee's sharp eyes locked onto the fair-haired figure he had been warned about.
Silent as a shadow, Bruce moved through the crowd with the fluid readiness of a warrior who trusted nothing to chance. He came up behind the broad-shouldered teenager, raised his hand, and tapped him lightly upon the shoulder. Then he spoke the words that would open the door to one of the most treasured friendships of his entire life. "I heard you were looking for me," Bruce said, his voice calm, but his body coiled and prepared for sudden violence. He leaned slightly back from the waist, his eyes hooded and unreadable, every muscle ready to strike or defend in a heartbeat. In those tense seconds, the fate of their entire relationship hung suspended in the balance. Slowly, the tall young man began to turn, and Bruce braced himself for whatever might come next. But instead of a clenched fist or a hostile glare, Doug Palmer offered something Bruce had not expected at all. He extended his open hand in a clumsy, sincere gesture of friendship, his nervousness written plainly across his youthful face. In that single unguarded moment, Bruce Lee understood everything he needed to know about the boy before him. There was no menace hidden behind those eyes, only the earnest longing of a teenager who wanted nothing more than to learn. The tension melted away like morning mist, replaced by the quiet warmth of mutual recognition. Reaching out, Bruce clasped the young man's hand, and with that simple contact, two destinies became forever entwined. What could so easily have ended in bruised knuckles and wounded pride, instead blossomed into the first seed of a lifelong bond. Doug had found his master at last, and Bruce had found a student whose loyalty would never waver.
Stepping into Bruce Lee's world for the first time, Doug discovered a training group unlike anything else in all of Seattle. Here gathered a beautiful mixture of humanity, with black and white, Chinese and Japanese, all standing shoulder to shoulder. They came from boxing rings and judo mats and rough street corners, yet they shared one burning desire: to master a truer path. In an era scarred by deep racial division, Bruce Lee's willingness to teach anyone of any color was nothing short of revolutionary. He did not care where a person came from, what language filled their home, or the shade of their skin. All Bruce asked was that a student came with sincerity, an open mind, and a genuine hunger to grow. Doug could scarcely believe his eyes as he watched the 135-pound Bruce Lee dominate men nearly twice his size. He saw Bruce defeat a powerful 225-pound opponent in arm wrestling, then drop down and perform one-handed push-ups with that same giant riding upon his back. Every display shattered another one of Doug's assumptions about the limits of the human body. Yet, as the weeks unfolded, it was not Bruce's astonishing physical power that captured Doug's heart the most. Beneath the fearsome martial artist lived a young man who was warm, playful, and refreshingly human in every way. Doug slowly realized that his teacher was not a distant god upon a pedestal, but a real person with dreams and struggles of his own. Off the training floor, Bruce Lee delighted in telling the corniest jokes imaginable, the kind that made his students groan and burst into laughter all at once. He spoke openly of the long, exhausting hours he spent working at Ruby Chow's restaurant to make ends meet. In these ordinary moments, Doug came to love not just the master, but the man himself.
Through countless hours of training together, the relationship between Bruce and Doug deepened into something far richer than teacher and pupil. Bruce recognized in the young man a rare sincerity and a steadfast loyalty that meant more to him than any raw fighting talent. Their connection grew from lessons in a basement studio into a genuine and abiding friendship. What made their bond so remarkable was the way Bruce treated Doug not as a follower, but almost as a younger brother. He shared his evolving philosophy, his frustrations, his ambitions, and the private thoughts that he trusted only to those closest to him. For a boy who had once stood anonymous in a festival crowd, this closeness felt like a miracle. As their friendship flourished, Bruce made a gesture that would leave Doug breathless with gratitude and disbelief. He invited the young man from Seattle to travel with him across the ocean, all the way to the bustling streets of Hong Kong. It was an invitation that would carry Doug into a world he had only ever dreamed of seeing. Picture the wonder of that teenage boy walking the crowded, neon-lit avenues of Hong Kong beside the mentor who had transformed his life. The very same Doug who had once stood anonymous in a festival crowd was now journeying across the world at Bruce Lee's side. Every step through those foreign streets was a testament to how far their friendship had traveled. In Hong Kong, Bruce welcomed Doug into the intimate landscape of his origins, the place that had forged him into the warrior he became. Doug glimpsed the neighborhoods where a young Bruce had once fought and struggled, and he met the people who had shaped his early years. It was a profound gift to be shown the roots of the man he so deeply admired.
Everywhere they went, Doug witnessed the fierce ambition that burned inside his friend like an unquenchable fire. Bruce spoke constantly of his towering dreams, of becoming the greatest martial artist the world had ever known. And though such goals sounded impossible for a young man of modest means, Bruce declared them with a conviction that made others believe. What Doug came to understand was that Bruce Lee's greatness sprang not merely from his body, but from the extraordinary force of his spirit. Bruce refused to accept the limitations that the world tried to place upon him because of his size, his race, or his circumstances. He simply decided who he would become, and then he poured every ounce of himself into that vision. Looking back across the years, Doug Palmer would come to treasure those days as among the most precious of his entire life. He had not only learned to move and fight in ways he had once thought impossible, but he had gained something far greater. He had earned the friendship and trust of a man who would one day be remembered by the whole world. The lessons Bruce gave Doug reached far beyond punches, kicks, and the mechanics of combat and self-defense. Bruce taught him about dedication, about authenticity, and about the courage to live as your truest self without apology. These were gifts that would guide Doug Palmer long after their days of training together had passed into memory. And so the story that began with a frightened boy in a firecracker-scented crowd became a friendship that would endure for a lifetime. Doug Palmer had gone searching for a kung fu teacher, but what he found was a brother, a guide, and a legend in the making. In the end, the greatest thing Bruce Lee ever taught him was that a single moment of courage can change the entire course of a life.